as a CEO, respect yourself and adapt. Because at the end of the day, in a classical setting, you're sitting on top of the hierarchy, which makes it very easy for you to do silly stuff and for the others to be fine with that, until and you just find out when it's too late. So very important to question yourself into which direction you go, what you work on, how you deal with the people and the culture in the company, and whether, this also is oriented toward the goals that you want to accomplish. Also on a social level as a company, right? This inspection and adaptation is key, I think.
Welcome to the Founders Codebook podcast, where B2B founders share the secret recipes behind their success. I'm Padrig Guillard, helping B2B tech company boost their conversion using Webflow. And today I'm sitting down with Georg Hauzenberger, CEO at SureVIVE. I'm really glad to have him here today to discuss how he's building a product suite for rescuer to be faster. So let's get cooking. Georg, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you very much. Thanks for taking the time. Appreciate being here. I'm fine, thanks. As we discussed before, the year started off quite intensely. I'm glad to be talking about that. So there's a lot of dynamic at the moment in the business.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting, product suite that you are building at SureVIVE, and I wanted to have you on the show because it's a bit different from what we see usually, and all the AI crazy stuff. I think having something that is more grounded and also having a really interesting application that's basically save lives. I think it was interesting to have you on the show. So before going directly into SureVIVE, if you could just give you a bit of background and introduce yourself so we know more about you before jumping right into the product.
Sure, my pleasure. So I'll try to focus on the most relevant points. I'm originally a electrical engineer by education, I'd say. My joke always is that I basically said I only want to work with hardware because I was kind of a hardware telecoms guy. And after 2 years, I gave up because, I was back then working in satellite communications and I dealt with a lot of software back then, like network management systems. So I got caught up by reality, I think, and I enjoy it, I need to say. And how to say so. I basically saw a lot of different contexts. I did work in telecoms, but in different roles, ended up in financial steering as well. After that, probably, to motivate a bit like the for rescuers, by rescuers motto that we have, I started off at the company that is doing air rescue in Switzerland. So that's an odd, I would say, 7, 8 years ago, 8 probably already. And this company is called Swiss Air Rescue Rega. And they have a fleet of, I would say, 2,000 helicopters, a tad less perhaps, that are performing air rescue operations all over Switzerland. Back then, I knew it from before, like the whole mission critical thing and dealing in 24/7 contexts with 24/7 contexts. But in that case, it was really like focused on operation centers. So, like those emergency dispatchers. And the first project back then was to introduce a new mission control system in Western Switzerland. I'm not sure whether it's the word in French, but in France, French, let me put it like this. But Western Switzerland, you're saying Système de l'aide à l'engagement. So that would be the one that I'm talking about. And there was like a big project where we kind of changed a lot of things, communication platforms, and also the mission control system. And this is where, speaking about, you said grounded, right, down to earth. That was really, we needed to think of all aspects of the project back then. And this is really what makes it interesting. On a given day, we switched in the morning because we did all of that during the night. We introduced a new mission control system, and all of a sudden, all of the helicopters were alerted for emergency missions via that. And after that, I did a few more projects, alert apps from, I would say, to the helicopters for Alpine Rescue Switzerland, which is like the mountain rescue in Switzerland. That brought me to this role right now at SureVIVE, where, as you said, I'm responsible for the business as CEO. And what we are doing is we are basically taking one of the applications that I was dealing with, so the one that is used to alert alpine rescuers in Switzerland, And we said we can do more with that. And the more with that is alerting rescuers across the board now. I can elaborate on that afterwards.
Okay. Okay. So basically, what it's interesting about your background. So you start with, hardware engineering, software application, satellite communication, and then you end up into the rescuing field, basically. So it's like, merging your two experience or two roles before coming at SureVIVE, which is, I think, really interesting here. So yeah, maybe you can explain a bit what is the mission of SureVIVE, what was the original problem for SureVIVE to solve.
Okay, I try to phrase it succinctly. So at the end of the day, it's all about alerting a group of people in a reliable way and giving them as much information as possible about what happened. And as much information as possible, as you can imagine, actually at the very beginning of the process, there is an emergency call, a distress call from someone, which has a position. There is some typology to what happened, right? And a bunch of other stuff, how is the person doing? In the future, if you look toward the future, you might even be able to transfer vital parameters from the person, right, via some platform straight away to the rescuers. And we said, getting back to the point there, we said that what we want to enable is we want to deliver a reliable platform to alert rescuers. We're saying faster, so to alert them faster in a safer way, right? And to make them wiser. Wiser is a very important aspect of the business, because wiser means, as I said before, giving them as much information as possible about the accident that happened or the sickness that someone has, but also enabling them to understand what is happening during the rescue operation. So where are the other rescues from my group? Let me give you an example. So I kind of like the example of the avalanche mission, because it involves a lot of different groups of rescuers. Time limited scenario, tight coordination. So an avalanche goes down. There might be some people that are buried beneath the snow. Someone sees that, calls an operations center, says, I saw some tracks from skiers. Please do something about that. And them hearing this, they say, oh, okay, I definitely need to alert a specialist, is someone that knows the mountains there and can assess whether it's safe to land. They put them on a helicopter. So, the first thing is you need to alert the helicopter as well, the specialist. The specialists are volunteers in Switzerland. So you kind of need to make sure that you understand who is available, where they are, and where the helicopter can pick them up. Then the helicopter brings them to the avalanche cone. At the same time, you need to alert avalanche dog handlers. There are commercial helicopters that are involved that are flying to those avalanche dog handlers, picking them up, flying them to the avalanche cone. And there are a whole range of other groups that are involved, might be the police or whatever. And getting back to the wiser topic, we want to provide the rescuers with a comprehensive situational awareness view, whether you're at the accident location or somewhere in the back office managing it in a web application or whatever, or you're sitting as an emergency dispatcher in the operations center, as I said before. And
Okay,
that's
so
the mission.
basically, SureVIVE, so you are providing the application and kind of the infrastructure to manage all that and provide information to the people using the app, basically all this information so they can organize themselves the rescue mission, or you are also triggering some action to, for example, to call the different rescuer who are available to also to manage the helicopter, etc. Are you are only giving information, or you are also helping to manage and organize those rescue missions?
That's a good question. Actually, we're doing both. Let me give you an example. When in a ski resort someone has an accident, we also give ski patrol the opportunity to call a helicopter. So to perform an action on the site, so they can request a helicopter or an ambulance. It's basically the same technology behind it, I would say. And another thing that we included, I would say one aspect of our corporate culture is that we're saying we're partnering with others. We want to partner. We don't want to close. We're not doing everything ourselves. We know that Other companies can do other aspects of what is needed better than us, right? For a variety of reasons, but we work with them, we integrate them. And one of those applications is like a messaging application that is used in Switzerland, secure messaging application that we integrated. And whenever the avalanche mission from before, you alert those people, right? The avalanche dog handlers, the specialists, they're in one messaging group there, and they can communicate with each other, so they can also organize themselves on the spot.
Okay. So it's information, but also infrastructure to facilitate the communication between the different parties involved, right?
Exactly, yes.
Okay. And what was the original problem before deciding to create SureVIVE? It was because it was like scattered communication or scattered, group and difficulty to coordinate everything. That was the original problem. If I make some assumption here, but I'm curious to understand what was the original problem, because there is always a story behind, the story, and most of the time a problem behind the creation of a company, basically.
Good point. The thing is that just until recently, when you had one of those avalanche missions, for instance, right? I was talking to a few dispatchers who said, whenever we alerted those specialists and the avalanche dog handlers that I mentioned, because that was via pager, with just a tiny bit of information. First of all, it basically just said, hey, we need you, in a way, right? And then afterwards, they needed to call back, and you needed to transfer all of this information, but kind of sequentially. Always repeat yourself. So they said, I got, in such scenarios, I got inundated with calls, up to the point where I needed to say, okay, now I need to rest for like 30 seconds just to sort myself, And the story behind the company, like to maybe take the step back, is obviously that, but even further in the past, and that was the original founding story of SureVIVE, I would say. The product that we use or that we operate, develop, whatever momentum, is actually older than the company itself. So our company is 3 years old, but the product is 10 years old because we bought that from another company. They have, as pioneers in Switzerland, in Ticino, which is the Italian-speaking part of Switzerland, together with the local first responder organization, they have identified the problem of when a person suffers from a cardiac arrest, that normally the ambulance is arriving at a time that is, let's not say too late, but if an ambulance needs 5-6 minutes to the person, in those 5-6 minutes, you can send someone that performs a cardiac, that performs a reanimation, a resuscitation, that improves the outcome, so the chance of survival and the prognosis for the patient, by a really great deal. And that was the original trigger for that, expanded across cantons for first responder alerting. And what SureVIVE did is that we said, okay, that's a great product, that's a great use case behind it, and we think that we can use that for professional rescuers, for alerting helicopters, for alerting avalanche dog handlers, for alerting all range of different rescuers, right? This is how we got to the point that we are at today.
Okay, got you. Okay. So if we go back on more on the business and the day-to-day, story, when you arrive at SureVIVE, I mean, what did you do? And just I'm curious to understand, how did you assess the situation and prioritize the different things, because there is always a lot of things we want to improve, we want to to push forward, and you have such great result. I'm curious how you assess the situation, and then how did you prioritize, basically, the company roadmap, if I can sum up like that.
Sure, yeah. So it obviously helped me that I was kind of working on customer side, let's put it like this, in the past. So I basically knew where, not customers of us, right, but as a whole of this industry, let's say, because I basically knew where the pain points were as well. So when I came into SureVIVE, first of all, I thought, okay, basically it was all about establishing guidelines, let's say. So what do we want to be as a company? I kind of drew up like 10 principles, guiding principles, I called them, back then, still in use actually. They didn't change much after the 3 years, on how we want to operate. I mean, one example is that we want to do best in class support. Basically, you can say, that's an aspect of a product that not very often is paid a lot of attention to. And let me say it like this, depends a lot, I think, but in our case, I definitely knew that this is something that is very relevant for emergency organizations. So we said, okay, this is where we want to go. And speaking of measures, and also of prioritization, I said, okay, who do we have internally that can do that at the moment? People that need certain capabilities, like in Switzerland, you need to speak 3 languages basically, or at least you need to have a team that can speak all of those 3 languages. Be able to manage major incidents. You need to have some kind of on-call duty, such things. And of course, also manage the ticket volume. So have a steady flow of work on within the incident management process on a day-to-day level. And next steps were, that we said, okay, this is relevant for us as a company. We invest into that. We are working together with the partner, with the Swiss partner actually, for first and also second level now. And this is like the first step that we made in that direction, to bring them in, to have the people that we had internally collaborate with them, kind of bring the team into that direction that we can deliver this best-in-class support. How to prioritize amongst the topics, honestly said, is not always easy. As a CEO, you're also very often in firefighting mode, right? So, it's I guess it's important to long-term understand what the priorities are and to be able, flexible enough to short-term shift priorities as daily business goes, because this is effectively what is needed, right? To keep everything afloat.
Okay. What I understand is like you are setting priorities and like long-term goals, but sometimes you can shift the priorities on a short term, right? To get maybe some result, or maybe to learn more about the client, the customer. Is that how you approach that role?
Yeah, exactly. And
Okay.
I guess one thing at least that I regard as very important for myself, I mean, I'm CEO of an SMB, so we have like a headcount of 34 people. So obviously I can't sit in the ivory tower and say, I'm just like steering things and, I'm overseeing everything, and the rest of the company is working on those topics. When there are some gaps, then I obviously jump in, try to correct, and try to find a systemic approach afterwards on how to solve that. That led to some funny situations every now and then where I was like doing bogus stuff as well. But yeah, for the team, we all need to have a common direction.
Yeah. I like that approach, still having some, or sometimes having still ends in the business, because you're also, facing the reality maybe, and not just too much above on only the vision. I mean, that's the key point, where the head counts, sometimes you don't have anymore the capabilities to do that. But as 34 people, I mean, it's still something that is, I think, a team size that is agile in a way.
Yeah, I mean, just if because I kind of like that anecdote, and I think it's a nice one to maybe say that I consider leading by example very relevant, right? And those are like, those vague terms that are being used. And just to give you one example, for whichever reason, we had a very long journey to renovate or to replace the toilet seats in our company, right? So I'm not sure whether this is podcast ready, right? But I'm
I
nevertheless going to say it. And
I like where this is going. I can enjoy.
yeah, so maybe just a few aspects of the story. There, some evening I went back home and there was a large parcel in front of our door from the house, and I didn't think anything. I went in, and then after some time I thought, okay, but this can't be the toilet seats for the office, right? And then I went back. I mean, it's a multi-party house, so it could have been someone else's parcel, but for whichever reason I thought of that, and they were. So sadly, they ended up with me. So I needed to kind of bring those 6 toilet seats into Ticino, which is a small thing. But then the problem was that I placed them in the office, and obviously I don't expect someone to immediately take care of this. People have other stuff to do. But after 2 weeks, I said, guys, now we really need to do something about that. And then we organized, like let's call it a toilet seat task force briefly, and started mounting those toilet seats for like, I don't know, 2 hours or whatever. And now it's all shiny and new. And it's a small thing, but obviously, at least to me, it does matter. I hope to the others as well, right? This is what I mean with leading by example. So you should not, obviously, I should not be doing such stuff, but if it is necessary, I do it. And it should show to my company, to the others, that we need to work toward goals, not say, hey, this is not my responsibility because I am that, right? Or this. So just to
I like that.
on there.
I like that mindset. It's like, yeah, working together and really growing as a team. So yeah, that's very interesting. I have one question I love to ask is if you could go back in time and give an advice or different advice to yourself back then, what would be those advice?
About business or life or both?
I mean both, because I mean it's like when you are a founder, it's like the it's really thin. The frontier is really thin between pro and personal life. So yeah, please, any advice you could tell yourself, back then.
Well, maybe I'm not sure whether I'm making the right point here, right? From a big perspective, right? I think it's very important to take life seriously, but not too serious, right? And this applies to job and to personal life as well. This is something that when I look back a few years, I mean, I used to do a lot of project management, right? With tightly set deadlines, problems that came along of quite larger nature, at least in my small world. And, back then I was worried about problems a lot that I face at the moment, I don't know, 5 different tracks. So just to say that, basically, I don't know, obstacles in projects and things like that, right? And I am completely handling those things differently and less bothered by that. Doesn't mean that I'm not acting on them, right? But definitely less bothered by that. And I think in life as such, or giving an advice to a younger me, as you asked, right? I would say that, please think about the fact that there is a limited amount of time that you have on this planet. There are also individuals and also maybe topics or aspects of your life that are relevant for you, relevant for others perhaps as well, right? Family and friends. Try to spread yourself evenly and not take things too serious in life. Makes your life and others' lives much easier and carries you through the day with a smile. Sounds cheesy now, I know, but yeah.
But I mean that's a good advice. And if we are now looking to the future, what would be the advice you would give to entrepreneurs now starting their journey?
Well, to stay true to what I said, and
Say
this,
the same.
yeah, well, this definitely, I can understand. However, if you completely have skin in the game, then it's really something that is pressing, right? And if you also need to show performance with your company. One thing that maybe something more practical as an advice. We do have a lot of parallel tracks in our company. And the thing that I did last year was to say, guys, we need to make sure that we act according to strategy. So what we did was that we established basically two very high level strategic goals, started breaking them down to not actually to a team level, but rather to, let's say, annual goals, also long-term goals that are linked to those strategic goals. So kind of the tactics of achieving the strategy there. And then we constantly took time to discuss away from day-to-day operations, how to achieve that, also to maybe find different angles. And I think it's very, getting back to your question there, it's very relevant to, especially when a business is, when you're at the beginning of a business. I'm joking with a few guys, it's like being in founder mode. There is some person who is absolutely not in founder mode time-wise, but he said, I'm in founder mode because I need to do so much stuff in a very short amount of time. It pays off at least to every month or two, maybe quarter at most. Take a step back, take a full day away from daily business, think about things, try to establish a framework within which one can achieve the goals that one wants and also measure. It's trivial basically, right? But I think it's very important not to get lost in daily business. I even hear that from established companies that it's
So it's like doing your roadmap or the goal of the year tied to maybe the 5 or 10 years plan, and then cutting that into quarters, monthly, and then do those monthly reviews. So you are not, I mean, everyone who is running a business, any kind of business, I think that's still relevant because you can get lost quickly in the daily, as you say, the daily business task and just running forward and moving forward. And then it's always, I like that question. Even every week for me, it's like, are my tasks in my calendar working toward the bigger picture of the bigger goal?
fully.
And sometimes it's more, you can cut the noise basically. So there's sometimes that you want to do because, I don't know, it's like exciting or interesting and you are curious about it. Or maybe you enjoy doing it, but maybe that's not the task that is moving your business forward. Usually it's the task that you don't want to do that may be the breaker for your business, or really the task that will push you to the next step. So yeah, I really like that advice.
Yeah, but I can just, I'm fully with you there. It's, maybe just to add one thing, which is important for me to also say, we are always saying inspect and adapt, like working in an agile setting in software development. I think it is also very important not only for the Scrum team to function like this, with retrospectives and stuff, but for the entire company to function like this. And the hardest part is, especially, I don't know, as a CEO, respect yourself and adapt. Because at the end of the day, in a classical setting, you're sitting on top of the hierarchy, which makes it very easy for you to do silly stuff and for the others to be fine with that, and you just find out when it's too late. So very important to question yourself into which direction you go, what you work on, how you deal with the people and the culture in the company, and whether, this also is oriented toward the goals that you want to accomplish. Also on a social level as a company, right? This inspection and adaptation is key, I think.
Mm.
And also related to what you said before.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true that you are in the only position at the company basically where you have no one, you are reporting to basically. So yeah, it's true that it's maybe easier to go, off road or to go on the wrong direction. Yeah, it's like applying that rules to you. Basically, it's also, I mean, you're showing that you are also applying your own rules that you apply for the whole company or the company culture. So interesting. Okay, I think we are nearly the end. I had so much other question, but to respect your time, I think we will wrap up here. So maybe just before ending the episode, what are the next step for SureVIVE?
When one of the strategic goals that I mentioned is actually we're calling it tearing down boundaries to save lives. And this sounds a bit lofty. The idea behind it is I was talking about the avalanche cases, where we basically within a type of mission or event, we linked all of the groups together. But for a fact, the larger the event gets, or the more different specialists you need, the higher the chance gets that you need to involve another authority. In Switzerland, we have those cantons, right? So you might need to involve another canton. And that's a big thing that we're working on, in lack of better wording, a platform based on which we can exchange information in a very flexible way and scalable way across emergency organizations for all of the scenarios that I mentioned before, like asking an ambulance to another canton, you might say, right? Maybe even through a different system than ours, right? Again, we want to be open there. And this is definitely one important milestone that we have on the agenda. And obviously to develop the product further in the sense that I'd say it's not only rescue organizations that can be alerted in this way and connect to this hub, let's call it like this, right? But also companies, for instance, because also companies have paramedics, might need an ambulance or a helicopter, and should see enough so that they can handle problems amongst their employees, emergencies amongst their employees. And those are the next two big steps that we are currently working on.
Great. All right. And for people, where can people follow you and follow SureVIVE? What are the best platform to do that?
Good question. So me, I'm quite reachable on LinkedIn, I would say, trying to post as much as I can there, which is depending on workload, not that much. I'm glad to connect on LinkedIn, also to exchange ideas. The company as such, you can reach us via our website. So that's one thing if you want to check out what we do. And we're also quite active on Instagram nowadays. So, if you want to, in general, in case you're interested or one is interested in emergency operations as such, on our website and also on Instagram, you will find more and more use cases. We're also trying to tell stories of rescuers, not particularly related to our software, because we kind of like to spread the message about what all of those individuals are doing. Those are the best, I think, the best channels, platforms to follow us or me on.
Okay, I will add the link in the show notes so people can reach out and can also follow SureVIVE on the website and on Instagram.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, so thanks Georg for sharing all the journey, all the advice. That was really interesting. So really thank you for that, and thank you for being there today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe. And I'm Padrig Guillard, helping B2B tech company boost their conversion. See you in the next episode.